So I was on the internet earlier and I seen a lot of people talking about NFL.com's power rankings. We're at this point in the year where power rankings are going to be coming out, and it's always so funny because they're just power rankings. It's not like college football where the rankings really matter, but yet we seem to always get so invested into it, and it always sparks some type of argument or disagreement. And well, that's exactly what it did this week while looking at it. And also this week, have had such a big news cycle happening with trades happening. And the November 5th trade deadline isn't even around the corner, but you would think it was with everything that's happening right now. And on this show today, we are going to talk about everything that's happening. We're also going to be previewing these next week games. I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I'm your host, Matthew Raridan, and with me today, as always, is Ed Smith.
Welcome, y'all.
And Thaddeus Lloyd. Guys, we are 6 weeks into the NFL season now, and you start to wonder which teams are going to start taking off from the pack, that are starting to really get into gear. You're starting to see a complete team. And then you're starting to see those teams that are, well, maybe what we expected. And of course, there are teams that maybe we didn't expect to be this bad. Jacksonville. But we're also starting to see a lot of trades happening. It seems like the NFL, there is always so much drama. There's always someone wanting a better contract. There's someone wanting out of a certain franchise. And it never fails. We just always see that, and we saw exactly that happen this week. We see a player be almost a complete GM for a team. We've talked about it before, and it just continues to happen. It continues to happen. But I want to talk about first these NFL.com power rankings. I want to just talk about the top 10 because that's all we need here is the top 10 to really start talking more about, well, what were they really thinking? And I'm going to start with the first three teams that the NFL.com has in their power rankings. Number one, to some surprise, maybe, the Minnesota Vikings, as they are 5-0. Number two, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who are also 5-0. And at number three, the Baltimore Ravens at 4-2. Before we talk about those three teams, Ed, why don't you follow it up with the next three teams?
So next three, number 4, we've got the Houston Texans at 5-1. At number 5, we've got the Detroit Lions at 4-1 after an epic beating of Dallas. And we've got the Buffalo Bills at number 6 with a record of 4-2 and a completely embarrassing loss on their resume at this point, but it may have been the best thing for them.
Yeah. Thaddeus, you want to finish off with the last teams?
So last four, we got the Packers at 7 at 4-2, Washington at 4-2, Tampa Bay at 4-2, and then finally number 10, the Steelers also at 4-2.
So I got to ask first because everyone's going to wonder this, and this is what we're seeing online. Why is the defending Super Bowl champs, who are undefeated, at number 2 versus number 1? Ed?
Because they have pretty points. The Chiefs can win in any way you need them to win, and they are doing it at this point, despite the injuries, despite everything going on around the roster and the injuries and everything like that. They know how to win. But Minnesota Vikings are making it look pretty. So the power rankings for between those two, I think, has more to do with what it looks like rather than the result.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, if it's ugly, maybe that kind of deducts some points, and that's kind of how they're looking at things. So, Thaddeus, with the top three teams here, would you agree with how they are ranked 1 through 3?
Yeah, I would think so. Um, Obviously the Ravens lost their first two games, but then they won four in a row. But then you got the Vikings and Chiefs who are undefeated. Um, yeah, I think I would agree with it. You know, some people are wondering like why the Vikings are number one. I'm actually kind of satisfied that they're number one because they've beaten good teams and they don't have like a massive injury, discounting JJ McCarthy, that which has not really hampered them at all. The Chiefs have had the Rashee Rice injury, which has been pretty big for him. So that's one main reason I would put them in number two. And as Ed said, they got the pretty points. The Chiefs have not blown out a team yet this year, and they haven't even come close. All their games have been like one, maybe two score games this year. So yeah, I would agree with the top three at least.
Yeah, and see, with me and Ed being college football fans, we know that if this was college football, the Chiefs would be number one because we know how much impact last year affects this year. It's just how it's always been. I mean, you could look at the AP preseason polls, and it's usually the team that finished on top last year. This year was a different story because of how much talent Michigan lost. But the years that Georgia was just so dominant, they were always AP preseason number one. And if they were undefeated the first 5 weeks, like the Chiefs are, they would be number one. So, but I would agree with the Vikings being there at number one because, well, yeah, they've just done it in dominant fashion with every team that they've faced. And let's not forget that they beat the number 4 team here. They demolished them. And that number 4 team is the Houston Texans. So uh, I would agree with this. And Baltimore may be the hottest team in the NFL right now. So if you're doing it based off of that, then yeah, I would agree with 1 through 3. So I did talk about that number 4 team, and that being the Houston Texans. Their only loss being against the number 1 team. So rightfully, you would think they deserve to be at number 4. So 4, 5, and 6, we got the Texans. At 4, at 5, we got the Lions. And then at 6, we got the Buffalo Bills. And that's where things may start to kind of make you wonder. And I see Ed there. So, Ed, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
So I want to know how much of the Lions being at number 5 has to do with Aiden Hutchinson's injury in the middle of this last week's game. Does that affect the power rankings this early without them actually having played a meaningful down? I don't know. Because I would actually put Detroit above Houston at this point because they have looked more impressive and more dominant as a collective group than what the Texans have, in my opinion. Now, of course, Buffalo, they're good where they're at because their 2 losses have come to teams that are above them. And that's all we really need to say about about them at this point. The Texans, they're kind of cruising right along. I expected them to, and I continue to expect them to struggle a little bit with the uptick in competition coming into a first place schedule versus the last place schedule that they had last year. But looks like they are up to the challenge so far. And with 6 weeks into the season, we're a third of the way there. So I think this is a good turnstile point for that.
Well, I think the same reason Buffalo is there at 6 is also the same reason why Houston's there at 4. Houston's loss only loss being against the number one ranked team in the power rankings, the Minnesota Vikings. But I would agree that I think the Detroit Lions are a better team overall, just with how they played. Their one loss being against Tampa, but they have been so complete on both sides of the ball that they are the better team. Whereas Houston, yes, they are winning and they are starting to look so much better. They did not look like that the first several weeks. I think they struggled as a team, but that could be early season rust, just trying to get back in the swing of things. They did have a lot of injuries at the end of last year that this year they're trying to kind of get that chemistry back together. But Houston is looking like a whole lot better team, but Detroit overall, I think, is the better team there. So you could probably flip flop those. Buffalo, they haven't looked like the Buffalo team the first 3 weeks or so that how they are right now, and that's where it kind of worries me where they are on this list, because right behind them is Green Bay and Washington, Tampa Bay, and the Steelers. So Thaddeus, let's say number 7 and number 8. So the Packers and Washington Commanders. Do you think they're playing better football than the Buffalo Bills right now?
Gosh, I don't know. Are the Packers and Commanders playing better than the Bills? I I don't think so. That Commanders defense worries me. And this is power rankings of the whole team. So I know the Washington offense is very shiny toy right now, but that defense is still not great. And then the Packers, they've been getting better. The defense, I still don't know about the Packers defense. They're kind of muddled for me right now. I mean, obviously Xavier McKinney's been a huge addition for them this year, and he's been doing great with them. But overall, I'm just kind of iffy on the Packers defense. Jordan Love had a rough first couple starts, but he's getting back into the groove of things now, which has been good. So, but I would not put them above the Bills right now, just because Josh Allen's hasn't. Well, he probably should have had a couple this year, but he hasn't thrown any interceptions. The defense is still pretty good under Sean McDermott, so that's some of the reasons why I would still have the Bills over them.
Yeah, that defense is really good, and their defense is what won them the game this last week against Rodgers and the Jets. So uh, it's nice when you can have a defense bail you out like that. Josh Allen may not be putting up the numbers that he was before, but you know he still has that it factor in him that eventually he's going to start putting up some more video game like numbers. So I expect Buffalo to be a whole lot better, and we're going to talk more about them later with a recent addition they have. But Ed, I want to give you the floor just because we did mention your team. How are you liking right now where the Packers are sitting at number 7? You agree with that ranking?
I do agree with that ranking because, like Thaddeus said, Jordan Love coming back from injury, that takes a little time, especially the type of injury that he came back from. That lower leg stuff, you've got to be able to set your feet and plant and throw accurately down the field, especially when you have that young receiving core being the nucleus of that offense. So getting the ball to them is imperative. And over the past couple of games, LaFleur and Love, they've been able to work in some stuff to get him comfortable, get him to where he feels like he can get to those receivers. And this last game against the Cardinals, Dobbs showed out, even though there was a lot of talk about his 1 game suspension due to team rules. I still don't know what that whole mess was all about. They kept it internal. But you know what? A situation like that, you want to keep it internal. That way you keep the locker room together. And this is a team that is collectively together, and they've got to get we're going to find out soon enough, in due time, soon enough and in due time, just how good this team is with more games against their own division, which if anybody's seen a pattern in the top 10, I think I see one.
Yeah.
And Green Bay's right there in the thick of it.
There's so much parity in the NFL because if I was told week 1 that this was going to be the power rankings going into week 7, I'd laugh at you because there's no way that I would see Washington be there, uh, Minnesota. But the one team that's not there that I feel like we just briefly need to talk about that isn't on this list, that shocker, is the 49ers. Thaddeus knows that this is his team. I fully expect to see the 49ers here, being the team that represented the NFC in the Super Bowl, that was expected to represent them once again. And yes, it is still an early season. It is weird not seeing them on this list. Instead, you're seeing a Washington Commanders team or Minnesota team. It's weird to see that there's not a single NFC West team on there. But you are starting to see a trend on who may be one of the best divisions in football, which we'll talk about here to kind of piggyback off Ed's point. But 8, 9, and 10 with Washington, Tampa, and Pittsburgh. These are teams where, like Thaddeus said, Washington, their defense is iffy, but with 9 and 10 especially, you don't know what team's really going to show up. And one of them is my team. One of them's David's team. I could firmly say that I would believe more in a Tampa Bay team showing up versus my Steelers team. The one thing about my Steelers team is that I can always guarantee that the defense will show up. But that offense is always a big question mark. And with Tampa, they are 4-2 this year. And when they're clicking on offense, they look like they've got the league's best offense. But when they aren't, that's where the question mark kind of comes in. And that's why they have the 2 losses. So I'm fine with 8, 9, and 10 because of that. They are still great teams, and where the Steelers have that great defense as always. Tampa with a great offense when that's clicking, and Washington, what Jaden Daniels is doing there is honestly phenomenal. And when they have a healthy running back group, and Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, if he could be healthy, it is a great complementary football there. It really is. I always forget they have Zach Ertz there. I thought he retired, honestly, but he brings a nice veteran presence to a very young team. And I love seeing that because there's always that veteran on a young team that you could always look to for advice and for experience. I mean, he has gone to a Super Bowl. He has been a part of some great teams that Zach Ertz is a great veteran to have there. So I really like what Dan Quinn's doing up in Washington. So although there is a lot of talk on the internet, it's not that bad of a top 10 rankings, and it's not college football. This does not determine the playoffs one bit. Your record does. And so that's really what we need to look at in your play of football. So, like I said, Baltimore is one of the hottest teams in football right now. I would not want to play them. Right now, I would not want to play Baltimore. That's a reason why they're in the top 3. Whereas the defending Super Bowl champs, they're 5-0, and at right now, doesn't look like they're going to lose a game, just like Ed said. He's been saying, I don't see why. I just don't, and I know Ed agrees there too. So let's go to really what stands out the most, and that's not necessarily where it is ranked 1 through 10. It is who is in the top 10, and that is the NFC North. Besides Chicago, you have 3 teams representing the NFC North in the top 10 here, and I think the 3 of us agree that those 3 teams belong in the top 10, and that is number 1, Minnesota Vikings, number 5, Detroit Lions, and number 7, Green Bay Packers. Thaddeus, you agree with that? NFC North seems to be the best division in the NFL.
Yeah, it definitely is. There's no question about it. You can point to the Bears and say they've had a soft schedule, but they've won those games.
Yeah.
The Lions, they were a good team last year, NFC Championship. Can they repeat that again? Well, it looks like they are, although the Aiden Hutchinson injury is looking pretty bad. Even if that defense regresses, that offense is number 1 in the NFL right now, I'm pretty sure, in points per game. So they should be fine for the most part, even though if that defense might suffer a little bit. You got the Packers. Jordan Love, he's getting better every week. He's showing like why he should have that contract that he just got after those 8 games. It's looking good there. And then you have the Vikings who are undefeated. Very surprisingly, they got great coordinators, great head coach. It's working everything is working for them right now. So I don't think there's no dispute on that. The NFC North is looking like the best division right now.
Yeah, and Aiden Hutchinson is going to be tough shoes to fill. They will most likely regress. I expect them to probably go after maybe Hassan Reddick to try to get some talent there at the edge rush position. Like I said, Aiden Hutchinson is going to be tough shoes to fill there, but I really wouldn't want the drama of Hassan Reddick right now. But they know they have a void, so they said they want to be aggressive. So maybe they call up the Jets, Eagles, and Jets, and see if Hassan Reddick they could get a deal done there. So, but yeah, Ed, I know you're liking this. Well, maybe. I mean, it'd be nice to have just the Packers there, but yeah, iron sharpens iron, and the NFC North right now is full of iron. So, you like seeing this?
It's funny to me how when we went into this season, we expected the Lions and the Packers to be really good. It's the Vikings that we're shocked about. It's not the Bears because we're thinking, oh, well, Caleb Williams just plug and play into a decent roster and they'll start winning ball games. We're all shocked about the Vikings, especially at where they are as a complete unit at this point. Sam Darnold, he's risen from the ashes like the phoenix. And when it comes to playing quarterback. And guess what? Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones have a little bit to do with that. So use your weapons. Don't take unnecessary hits. Hand the ball out, pass it around. Sure, it all looks great for them. But I do find it funny that of all the teams in the NFC North that we would expect to see in the top 10 a third of the way through the season, the Vikings was not on my bingo card.
Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. I was watching the Pat McAfee show. I saw a clip of they were talking about TJ Watt. Me being a Steelers fan, of course, I'm going to watch that. And they were saying that TJ Watt's having an MVP worthy season right now, but they all admitted the MVP will go to a quarterback. You look at this top 10 list, and it just shows you quarterbacks reign supreme because the reason the Minnesota Vikings are at number 1, quarterback. Kansas City Chiefs, quarterback, although they have a very good overall team. Baltimore, you could argue now with the resurgence of King Henry in the backfield, but it's Lamar Jackson, quarterback. And the list goes on and on. You catch my drift right now that all these teams are there for the most part because of their quarterback. Steelers, you could say defense. And that's why my point of talking about TJ Watt, how he's having an MVP type of season, but it's going to be a quarterback, just like the Heisman for the most part is always a quarterback. So that's another thing that pops out to me is that the quarterbacks reign supreme. They always will. The quarterback position is the single most important position probably in all of sports. It is a big deal, and it is an art form. We've seen the best of the best. The way that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning really handled things, it was such an art that we were extremely blessed to see because we're seeing it grow now that football's in the future. There's so much more technology, but before that technology was really a thing, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, of course the quarterbacks before then, they really perfected this art that is just a fine piece to see. So the quarterbacks reign supreme, and they always will. But Ed, you talked about it earlier. Are injuries affecting maybe some of the positions in the top 10 with like the Lions and Packers? But you still stand that maybe the Aiden Hutchinson injury is the reason why they're at number 5? Or do you think it's just because Houston lost to the number 1 team?
I stand by Aiden Hutchinson creating some doubt as far as where Detroit sits. As far as Green Bay, if Jordan Love didn't get hurt while he was in Rio, I would venture to say that the Packers train would be just chugging along, as opposed to Jordan Love having to rush back to play the Vikings and lose that game. Whereas now that he is knocked off some of the rust of being injured, he's looking much more like the Jordan Love that we saw at the end of last year from November on through the playoffs.
Yeah. I agree there that sometimes it takes away that spotlight. If you're a Florida State fan, you're probably pissed at this too. So injuries affect everything. But on to some of the breaking news that's happening in the NFL. And of course, probably the number one thing that's being talked about is Davante Adams being traded to the New York Aaron Rodgers Jets. And this was big because when he requested a trade and it was already being talked about a trade, everyone said he's going to the Jets. His buddy Aaron Rodgers is there. Why wouldn't he go there? He does not control essentially which team he's going to be traded to a point. But it was pretty obvious that the Jets needed that wide receiver help. We know the chemistry that him and Rodgers have together. So it was kind of a no-brainer that that's where he was going to go. He was traded from the Raiders there, and the Jets gave up a conditional third-round pick, which can become a second-round pick depending on the performance of Davante Adams. So it's kind of a catch-22 type of situation. But the Raiders, they're protecting themselves by having that conditional third-round pick, and they are making the Jets eat his salary this year. But I was looking at the dead cap numbers, and it's not like the Raiders got off scot-free, so they're still going to have some dead cap space there. Calories, sorry. Salary. But Thaddeus, you like the trade? Do you think this really helps the Jets immediately?
It helps them out a little bit. I guess I don't know if it'll change a lot like people are expecting. I do think it's going to be a positive for sure. It's going to be another receiver that Aaron Rodgers trusts, based off of his feeling offense. Um, and what's going to be good is it's going to be good for Garrett Wilson, because now the number one corner, which he's been facing off against every single game this year, is now probably going to be facing a number two, because all that attention is going to Davante Adams now. So now Garrett Wilson's production might pick up. That's a good upside. But then obviously you have the trade rumors of Mike Williams trying to be traded, because now he's going to be wide receiver number 4 in that team, which nobody expected. He's the revolving door, I'm in and I'm out meme. So that was kind of an unfortunate thing that they tried to get Mike Williams, but then that just didn't pan out. But yeah, it'll probably might improve the record by like 2-3 games maybe. But I did have them winning the division this year, but they lost a big one to the Bills, and they probably made this trade a little too late, if I was going to be honest. So they still might have 9 or 10 wins, but it might not be huge.
Yeah, a lot of people think obviously that the trade was kind of fixed because Davante was already there Monday night. We all saw what happened on the Pat McAfee show where he was there when Aaron Rodgers was on the show. But this team's starting to look a lot like the team up north in Green Bay, because you got Lazard there, Davante Adams. Shoot, I just saw MVS got released, so I expect them to pick him up too probably. And we live in a world where we all hope for miracles and stuff like that. Well, I think I got the cure, because it is such a miracle, because Davante Adams these last couple of weeks was sitting out because he was hurt. He got traded, and now he's just good to go. His hamstring is full strength. He is no longer hurt. It has been a miracle. So if you have an injury and you want to heal up fast, just get traded. Speaking of trades, and injuries, I see Aaron Jones is hurt. So, I mean, if you really want this Packers team to be the Jets, you might as well trade for him too. He'll probably heal up just like that too. So, but yes, GM Aaron Rodgers strikes again. As much as he says he has no part of it, I sure is looking like it. All within 1 week, the head coach is fired, and now your good old buddy Devontae Adams is back on the team. But Ed, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, just because, with you being a Packers fan and those two dominating for the Packers, how do you see this?
I see this as a way for the Jets offense to become more explosive, to make the team more offensive minded, when through Robert Saleh, it's more of a defensive mindset, where here we are with the fighting Aaron Rodgers controlling the offense. It is going to be an offensive team. When you have a player of Devontae Adams' caliber being able to get off the line no matter who he's facing and at full strength, and then Garrett Wilson on the other side, that is terrifying for defenses. And it is what else is that going to do? That's going to open up the run game. That's going to open up these seam routes, these underneaths, these different things that Aaron Rodgers can manipulate and do well with. And it actually brings back the free play model that Aaron Rodgers is known for, trying to catch defenses going offside, because now he has his guys that can make sure that everybody knows the call to get up to the line and just go, because was a big part of the game plan in Green Bay, was Aaron just manipulating the defense, and even on substitutions, taking those opportunities to get balls down the field. Well, if Garrett Wilson can be the Jordy Nelson to the Devontae Adams, then look out. The Jets are coming. But I still have question marks about their offensive line. I still have question marks about their special teams. I have there's just question marks all over that roster that have nothing to do with Aaron Rodgers.
And
Yes, he
coaching.
covered up for a lot of that stuff and did so while he was in Green Bay, but I don't think this is certainly not 10 years ago Aaron Rodgers. This is not 10 years ago Devontae Adams. This is today's version of it, which I think you'll see glimpses, but you're not going to see the full repertoire of what we saw when they were together before.
Are you kidding me though? Because they still had the Aaron Rodgers had a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Still same old Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah, he's the luckiest guy when it comes to that. It's just crazy how he's able to do that time and time again. So yeah, good old shades of the old Aaron Rodgers. But there's definitely a lot of question marks, not only on the roster but the coaching staff as well. So I think it's a little too late, just like Thaddeus said. It was not the only trade that happened. There was another trade that kind of caught us by surprise a little bit, but that is Amari Cooper to the Bills. Bills had made it clear that they were hoping to get more receiver help, and boy, did this help. Amari Cooper is still a legit all-pro type of receiver, an excellent route runner who is just going to bring a lot of talent to this team and a lot of experience too, especially when you drafted Keon Coleman. That'll be great mentor right there to have for a young receiver. So I love the trade. We knew that, we've talked about on here before, that Cleveland was going to have to start, letting go some of this talent to deal with this absurd contract of Deshaun Watson's. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're offloading because they need to. And everyone keeps asking, how is he still a starter? How is he still a starter? Well, yeah, he's still owed $98 million guaranteed. Okay. They've got a lot of money on the books for him. Too much to bench. So that's why the Browns are just continually to be the Browns. I feel bad for them. It's embarrassing at this point. It's been for a while because they continue to do it over and over and over again. Yes, they did get a 3rd round pick and a 7th round pick in next year's draft, in the draft after that. So for the 7th round pick. So they did get that, but we know that this trade was because they needed to, freeload some of the money that they are going to need to pay Deshaun Watson. So don't uh, don't expect this to be the only trade they make, because they are going to need to make some more. I saw Greg Newsome is on the trading block, so expect him to possibly get traded, and they do got some other stars there. So at this point, I'd one out. I really would. So uh, come out, get out of Cleveland if you can. So Amari Cooper to the Bills, Ed. I really like this trade for the Bills.
Mhm.
You like this as well?
I love this trade.
Yeah.
First off, I don't know any player in NFL history that has been traded for as many draft picks and that many different trades to other teams
Yeah.
than Amari Cooper has, because it went from the Raiders to the Cowboys for I think 3 draft picks, and then he goes to Cleveland, and now he's getting another couple of draft picks out. I mean, he is just a walking vending machine of draft picks in the NFL. As far as him being on the field, though, they were relying on Keon Coleman, a rookie, to be the number 1 receiver in that offense. That that took the focus of that offense and put it on their 2, granted, dynamic tight ends, but Keon Coleman, he's great for down the field. He reminds me a lot of Larry Fitzgerald when he first came out. There was a lot of, hey, just run down there and jump and catch it, uh, as far as that was concerned. So let Keon Coleman do that. And you do that better as a number 2 receiver, not your number 1. So let Amari Cooper run the routes that a number 1 receiver can run. And like you said, mentor Keon Coleman on what it means to be a professional and in this league, and let him impart some of that knowledge that he's gained over the time that he's been in the NFL, because he's getting a little longer in the tooth, as Amari Cooper has. So he's got knowledge to share. That's just going to help improve that wide receiver room as they go further into the season, because who knows what the ceiling is for the Bills if they have weapons at wide receiver as well as tight end, as well as Josh Allen. That's just all over the field. It makes them so tough to defend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could be wrong, but I feel like, it kind of reminds me of when Ted Ginn came into the league with Carolina. I mean, they had Steve Smith, who was an excellent route runner who could stretch up and down the field, but also left to right. And Ted Ginn, we know with his speed, was down the field. Well, that complements when you have a player like Steve Smith, who is the Amari Cooper in this scenario, that really is dangerous on all levels of the field. So having Keon Coleman now to be able to be that number 2, just being a deep threat, and of course everywhere else on the field, he is a great receiver. But I think it's more complimentary football that way. So I love the trade as well. So I'm in agreement with you. This should make Buffalo's offense more kind of bulletproof. But another trade that took place was Cam Akers going back to Minnesota. Minnesota is dealing with some injuries, like I mentioned earlier about Aaron Jones in the backfield. They swapped some late round conditional picks, but this was more of an insurance policy for Minnesota, making sure they had a running back there. And Akers wasn't really needed much more in Houston with Joe Mixon coming back from injury. So good for them to let him go back to Minnesota. I'm totally, in agreement with this type of trade. This is a small trade that could pay dividends, or could just be one of those that is nice and subtle that will just help just with for a couple weeks. So it's a good trade for Minnesota here. Thaddeus, I mean, what are your thoughts really on it? Is, if any at all? Just, I know it's not that big, it's not flashy like the other two, but it is a trade nonetheless.
Yeah, it was good that they got him back. He hasn't really been doing much um, since he had that good rookie season or second season, I believe, with the Rams, and then obviously the Rams got Coward Williams, and well, that's 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 been great for him.
Yeah.
So I think it should be good for him. A good second piece behind Aaron Jones. So
Yeah.
I actually had something to say on the Amari Cooper trade, though.
Yeah.
I'm also very happy with that trade because hopefully now it boosts my fantasy team because he has not been great this year. And I love the trade for him. However, my only cause for concern is I believe I don't have like hard proof of this, but I do believe he's leading the NFL in drops right now. And the Browns as a whole have led the NFL in drops. So I was a little bit concerned about that, but he should be better in a better, more uplifting environment, let's say. So yeah, hopefully that'll pay off for both sides. And then of course with the Browns, well, who's your number one now? Well, it's now Jerry Judy. And Jerry Judy, is like the take me with you kind of thing. But no, sir, that cannot happen today. So
Yeah.
that
Jerry Judy wishes he was back in Alabama at this point. I mean, I would too. I feel bad for him because he was an incredible talent at Alabama. It just going into the league, it just hasn't favored him as much with the environments he's been in. So, but yeah, he's their number one. We'll see what they can do, but the Browns just are not trending in the right direction right now.
and then with what Ed said about getting he's a pick generator, as Cooper's a pick generator.
Yeah.
Well, someone asked the question, like has he ever has there any been another player who has not been a free agent but has been with multiple teams? Because Amari Cooper's never been a free agent; he's always been traded. Well, then that brings up Brandon Cooks, who's also never been a free agent. He's always been traded. Although I think this year is the last year of his contract with the Cowboys. But yeah, it's just funny, just seeing these players just get traded around for these little picks.
Yeah, that is crazy. I didn't know that about Amari Cooper. I mean, I know that he's been traded, several times, but I didn't really think about that he was never really a free agent. So, just how I guess it works out. So, hopefully, it works out for him in Buffalo. Before we get over to the picks from last week, Thaddeus, just a quick rundown. I see that Atlanta got approved for Super Bowl 62. So that's going to be taking place at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium over in Atlanta. Just like the college football playoff seems to always go there. They're bringing in a lot of money there. And lastly, just a quick breakdown. Tom Brady being approved for a 5% stake with the Raiders. And it just had me wondering because there's a lot of ramifications with this now that he is an announcer. Just go through a quick rundown of them. He is not permitted to be in another team's facility. As an announcer, I feel like that's part of your job. Not permitted to witness practices. Also part of his job as an announcer. He's not permitted to attend broadcast production meetings, either in person or virtually. That's part of his job. So those are just the top three right there. So I want you fans to let us know in the comments your thoughts of, does that mean he's going to be stepping down from his Fox contract? Is there going to be some type of payout? Because those top three things right there are part of his job as an announcer. So it makes me wonder. I mean, he was a talented quarterback, so maybe he doesn't need to be a part of those things because he could still announce the games. But I don't know if he's allowed to announce the games with it being on another team's facility. I'm not sure. So let us know in the comments what you think about that. If you think he's going to step down, if he has to, because sure seems like it. So we'll find out, I'm sure, in the next week or two. But that's about it for our recaps and some of the other things that we wanted to talk about. Thaddeus?
Yeah, I just had two things on that. First off, well, since now he's a part owner, that means he officially retired. He can't be on an NFL team as a player. So,
No,
bye bye Miami.
no Jackie Moon situation. Okay.
Yeah. And then it's kind of crazy that he's getting paid $400 million to, commentate, but then he might not be able to do that. So yeah, it's going to be.
I
Just
mean, I'm sure he knew what he was getting into, and I'm sure he's perfectly fine financially. So I think he'll be just fine. But it just does make me wonder. I mean, this is his first year of his contract as an announcer. I mean, he's only done 6 games now. So yeah, I guess maybe it'll be a short-lived career. But Thaddeus, how's our records looking? How were our picks this last week?
Well, last week was uninteresting as far as upset picks went, and our 5 games, we all hit at least 4 of them. So Ed and I both went 5-0, and then Matt missed 1 game, which was the Broncos Chargers game.
Yeah, I tried going a different game than you guys because, well, I need to catch up, and
Yeah.
well, it didn't pay dividends at one bit. I don't even think Denver Broncos could beat a varsity football team that last week. So,
But yeah, that brings your record up closer to 500 though. You're at 14-16. Ed is now at a 66%. He's 20-10. And then I'm 16-14. I bounced back from my horrendous week last week. So, and I did not pick the same ones as you, Ed, because I picked some games before you did. So you took some of mine. I took some of your mojo. We both took each other's mojo.
Okay.
Whatever you say.
I'm not gonna cry about it.
Whatever makes you feel good.
Yeah. Yep, whatever floats your boat. But, well, I tried picking an upset, and it did not pay off, but I got some ground to catch, especially with how Ed's been performing lately. So, well, let's start with these week's games, and let's start with the first one, and that is the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints. And I just have to say, I feel like whether it's just me or maybe it's us on this show, I feel like we jinx teams. I really feel like we do because this New Orleans Saints team, especially when they blew out the Dallas Cowboys, granted, we didn't realize how bad the Cowboys were at the time. We talked very high about this team with Kubiak at their offensive coordinator. We thought, all right, well, things are looking good. Great direction with this New Orleans Saints team. And I even did that with the Broncos last week, and look what happened there. It was just embarrassing. So these are two teams that I've jinxed already, and now they're facing each other. So it's like, gee, who do I pick? Who do I pick? But I saw a Spencer Rattler player last week that it was his first game. I was impressed with him. You wouldn't have guessed it was his first game, and it was a division a rivalry type of game. I was impressed with it. They did lose the game, and I just saw some flashes of what's to come with him. But the Saints are just an injury wrecked team. They really are. They're going to be without Chris Olave. They're going to be without was it Shaheed? Rashid? Gosh, I can't pronounce his name.
Rashid Shaheed, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister, and I'm pretty sure it's Taysom Hill's still out. I don't know who Spencer Rattler is even really going to throw the ball to. Maybe he'll just run it or give it to Alvin Kamara here, but I can't pick a Denver's Broncos team based on what I saw last week. It was just embarrassing. They had no offense whatsoever. Patrick Surtain's going to be out, but then again, probably doesn't matter because Saints aren't going to have anyone to throw it to. So this one's kind of a toss-up type of game, but with Spencer Rattler, with what he was able to do last week, I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints to win this game here. I don't see it being high scoring whatsoever. It's not going to be super pretty. I'm going to go 17-10 New Orleans. Ed?
Well, this game is kind of like watching Shriners try and fight the Children's Miracle Network. Because, wow, this is terrible between these two teams. And there's a couple of things that I'm looking at here that make me want to go ahead and pick the Broncos somewhere in the vicinity of 1917. And one of them is Sean Payton coming back to New Orleans for the first time as a head coach. He's getting Bo Nix comfortable in the offense, going against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL. The worst defense in the NFL against Sean Payton. That's a recipe for disaster for the Saints. So I'm going to go with the Broncos and just I hope it's nearly as entertaining on the field as what that analogy is in my head.
I want to see a Jamal Williams game because when he was with Detroit, I felt like there was so much spark there. And I have yet to see that really, at least this year in New Orleans. He had a little bit last year, but this year has kind of been upset a little bit.
Absolutely great locker room guy.
Yeah, yeah, he is. He is a personality and then some. Thaddeus, what are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, it's we're doing it because it's the Sean Payton Revenge Bowl, I guess. But I don't expect it to be very high scoring either. I mean, I didn't even know the Saints defense was that bad. I knew they were kind of bad. They've been bad during this 4-game losing streak. But I didn't even know they were that bad. And this Broncos defense is still a top 10, even without Surtain. So I would fully expect the Broncos to win this. Bo Nix has been below average, in my opinion, but he's been literally been leading the team in rushing every single week. So there's your funny stat of the week. But yeah, I got them winning like 13-10. It's not going to be a very fun game. It's probably going to be very sloppy. So
yeah. Especially after what I saw last week with Denver, I can't see them having a decent game. But who knows? It's the NFL, and right now there's a lot of teams that are like a roller coaster, and maybe they will prove me wrong. Well, another team that I have jinxed big time is the Seattle Seahawks as they take off the Atlanta Falcons. I remember talking about the Seahawks being 3-0 very quietly. Now they've lost 3 in a row, and they are 3-3. Atlanta Falcons, on the other hand, are starting to find their mojo. They are starting to look really good. Kirk Cousins has finally found his comfortability within a new offense down in Atlanta. I mean, he's leading the number 7th offense in the league right now. But when you look at the numbers, it's kind of striking that the Seahawks have the number 6 offense in the league, yet they've lost the last 3 games in a row. Their passing seems to be on par as they are the number 1 passing team in the NFL, but they are still have lost 3 games in a row. So Geno Smith, as we saw when he faced the Lions, which they lost, he still kept chugging. And I was impressed with that. I really like seeing that with Geno Smith. But this Atlanta Falcons team is very talented offensively and defensively. And now that they've found their rhythm, I feel like it's going to be hard to bet against them in this game. When you have a quarterback, Kirk Cousins, who may not be the best, but he's putting up numbers, Bijan Robinson in the backfield, and then the receiving group of Kyle Pitts, if he could get things going, and who's their other receiver from USC? Drake, why am I drawing a blank on his name right now?
London Bridge is falling down.
Yes, there we go. Drake London. They do have a very young, talented group besides Kirk Cousins. So I'm going to go with Atlanta winning this game here. And they're going to put up some points, but I think the Seahawks are going to put up some points too. I'm going to go with a 32-28 game Atlanta. Thaddeus?
Yeah. Yeah, the Seahawks, that 3-game losing streak. So it was correct. They did play not great competition their first 3 games. And then we started playing even slightly good teams. The defense has kind of crumbled. Now, like I said last week, they haven't had their defensive line back. That offense is still very potent, but the defense has been letting up so much. And the Falcons came off a good win last week versus the Panthers, but the Panthers are a bottom feeder. So, I mean, I also got the Falcons winning this one. It just seems, although it could potentially be a trap, I feel like, but just something's telling me that the Falcons are going to win this game, probably like 35-30, something around there. The Falcons haven't had any pass rush of themselves either, but the back end has been pretty decent, I think. So I think the Falcons will get just enough done to win this game. And if it's close, Kirk Cousins has been very clutch this year. So,
Yeah. Ed?
Well, I'm looking over the different rankings and the different matchups and all these other things, and it's mid. Across the board, it's mid. There's really not much differentiating these two teams other than time zones. It's it's been that type of thing between these two. However, I do find it interesting that Seattle is one of the worst teams about getting off the field on third down, whereas Atlanta is in the top 10 in getting off the field in third down. That, I think, is going to be the catalyst of just the differentiation between these two teams. So I'm going to take Atlanta at home, and hopefully they wear the red helmets because I love those so much more than any other version that they have.
Yeah.
And as far as the score goes between the two, considering that both of these teams are in the top 10 in passing yardage, it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be got to be somewhere in that 38 to 27 type range.
Okay. I like that. I see that kind of happening. Very similar to when Atlanta won in overtime on a walk-off just a couple weeks ago. Just that type of game like they did against Tampa Bay. So I could see that happening, especially with the way Geno Smith and that offense is going. But Ed, I'm actually going to pass this right back over to you as we talk about a big-time NFC North showdown between the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm going to let you take the floor on this one.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. This is going to be fun. A divisional game. And the fact that this is not the feature game of the week, I can't quite understand it. But at the 6 game point, I know the NFL can't do their flex games yet because nobody really thought the Vikings were going to be this good. Let's be honest with that. But I do find that between the two teams, they are very similar as far as defensive capabilities. And as far as yardage, that's where their rankings are per yardage. I I do know that with the way that the Lions run the ball with that two-headed monster in the backfield, they are going to just lean on the clock the entirety of this game. And that is going to force Sam Darnold to quite possibly just throw up some Hail Marys and hope Justin Jefferson bails them out. And I don't think that is a recipe to win this game. So I will take the Lions on the road at US Bank Stadium, and I will take them 28 to 25.
Yeah. Okay. With what you said earlier about that, I know that they can't have this flex game and it's still early, and we didn't anticipate Minnesota to be this good. They moved a lot of things around this week to make the featured game of the week, and that is going to be the next game we talk about, and that's Kansas City and the Niners. So why couldn't they make this a bigger deal too, but in the morning or the early slot? I think that they should have, because this is a very big game, and it's a pivotal game for first place. And we're talking about tied with the tiebreaker or a 2-game difference. That's how big this game is, and I think it's important. And we talked about teams being so complete. This Detroit Lions team boasting the number 10th offense and the number 6 defense. I mean, they are super complete. I've bet almost every single time against the Vikings, and I almost want to ask myself, well, have you learned your lesson, Matthew? Have you learned it at all? Hell no, I haven't. I'm going with the Lions here. Okay, I feel like I have to. Yes, the Aiden Hutchinson injury is a big blow, but if I know this team, they aren't going to. They're not going to make it affect them as much as people want it to seem. This is a very collective team right here that will play in his honor. That's how much they are like a brotherhood there. If you see their videos in the locker room, they are very connected. So I see Detroit winning this game. They are going to have like a vice on Sam Darnold in this game. And yes, he can only throw it up so much, and Justin Jefferson come down with the ball. But I got Detroit winning this game against the Vikings. I do think the Vikings are going to put up a great fight. I think it's going to be pretty close, but I'll go with Detroit winning this game. Let's go 27-21. Detroit. Thaddeus?
Well, now that leaves it up to me now, I guess. I was slightly moving Lions, although I have it at a coin toss right now. But simply by the fact that you guys took the Lions, I'm going to take the Vikings in this one. It's really a coin toss to me. I'm really not sure. I think the Aiden Hutchinson injury is massive. If the Lions don't get an edge rusher, like people have been talking about Max Crosby, the Lions have actually been in rumors with Hassan Reddick directly. If they don't have someone to fill that void, this defense is going to go right back to where they were last year. And right now, they haven't signed anyone. And I feel that with that, the Vikings will be able to take that opportunity and make this into a shootout. Now, I still think the Flores defense is good. They are going to have to give up some points to this Lions offense. They managed to keep in the first NFC North divisional matchup this year. We take a look at it. They managed to hold the Packers pretty good offense down for 3.5 quarters or 3 quarters, but then that offense just exploded because Jordan Love's crazy and all that stuff. So I do think I'm going to take the Lions to have another 28 points, but the Vikings are going to score 35. This is going to be a really close game. I can't wait to watch this one. But yeah, I'm going to have to take the Vikings in this one. It's really close, and it's a toss-up, but
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Vikings.
Yeah. Okay. It is a toss up in my opinion too. I was kind of on the fence on how I saw this game going, but I just have to go with the Lions. And similar to what I just did with Ed Thaddeus, I'm going to have you take the floor as this next game being your team, and that will be the Kansas City Chiefs going into Levi Stadium to face off against the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, so here we go again. 2 Super Bowl matches and a couple regular season matches later, and it's Kyle Shanahan versus Andy Reid once again. And Andy Reid has absolutely had Kyle's number when it's come to their matchups. I believe Andy Reid is 5-0 versus Kyle Shanahan, including the 2 Super Bowls. It has not been great. Patrick Mahomes has been unbelievable in all 5 games. I think he's had multiple touchdowns and stuff like that. So the last year, obviously, you had the Super Bowl. That was a close game. But 2 years ago in 2022, Christian McCaffrey's first game and one of Jimmy Garoppolo's last games, the Chiefs blew out the Niners. I think it was like 44-19. I remember it was pretty bad. I felt terrible that day. But I think this time the Niners will be able to pull it out. You got then obviously this year compared to last year, the Niners defense hasn't been great, but the Chiefs offense has been statistically very middle of the road when it's come to everything. They lost Rashee Rice. They have Juju Smith-Schuster to fill that void. He destroyed us 2 years ago. I don't know if he's the same player. He had a bunch of yards in his first major role as wide receiver 1. So that's to be determined. But I just think this Niners team, they've gotten a little bit more healthy. They need this win to stay atop of the NFC West. They only have a half game lead on the Seahawks right now. And they're looking for that number one seed in the NFC, even though the NFC North has been with the top of the NFC right now. So they need to keep up. I see this as a must-win game for the 49ers. And so I got the 49ers winning this game 17-13.
All right, Ed.
Anybody that's been watching this show since the beginning of the season already knows who I'm going to pick in this game, because you dance with the one that brought you, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Have they lost? Are they going to lose? I don't know, but until they lose, I don't see a reason not to pick them. And not only has Andy Reid beaten Kyle Shanahan 5 times in a row, but he's also stole his nuggies. That's how bad it's been for Kyle Shanahan facing the Chiefs. So it's going to be the Chiefs, and it's going to be another one of those Patrick Mahomes specials where he doesn't flinch when things get down, and just brings them back to where they expect to be. So it's going to be 22-17, in my opinion.
I think one of the key factors in this game that's really going to decide it is third downs. Right now, the Chiefs' defense is holding their opponents to about 35% conversion on third downs, whereas the Niners are almost a full 10% points up at 43%. So that shows you that the Chiefs are doing their job on getting their defense off the field on third downs and getting their offense back on, where the Niners are really struggling with that, which is so weird to think because the Niners usually boast one of the best defenses in the NFL. So it's going to come down to that key metric here is, will the Niners be able to keep the Chiefs off the field, and vice versa? But to Thaddeus's point, and as much as I didn't want to agree with him or was hoping he wouldn't pick his own team, I have to go with the Niners here. This is a must-win game, although the NFC West is not as strong, so it's not in super dire. The Niners are in some uncharted waters right now with their record, and like I said, it's weird to not see them in the top 10 in the power rankings, and there's a reason they're not. They need a major turnaround, and yes, they have dealt with a big injury bug. They don't even have Christian McCaffrey there, and that's part of the reason why they aren't the same team that they were. But Jordan Mason has done well. I know he's dealt with injuries. But when you have a Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Deebo Samuel offense there, Brock Purdy is also due for a big contract. I expect his level of play to start getting better. It is the Chiefs we're talking about, but this isn't the Super Bowl. This isn't the Steve Spagnuolo. Yes, they are the number 4 defense, but this isn't the Steve Spagnuolo. You can't touch this defense of the playoffs. I think that the Chiefs will give up this game in the regular season. It won't happen again in the Super Bowl, but I do think that the Chiefs will give this one up, and I do have the Niners winning this one. We're going to go 24-21 Niners. It is of note, though, the Niners are going to be without their starting kicker, too, and they signed, was it Matthew Wright, I think it was, or one of the kickers who he's not their starting kicker, so that is of note, but I still do have the Niners winning this 24-21. Next game here and last one to talk about is the New York Jets and Pittsburgh Steelers. And man, like I said, that miracle happened. Devontae Adams being traded. He is no longer injured. Are we going to see the old Aaron Rodgers? And he seems happier now. And man, when he's happy, things are going right. That can be scary. There's still a lot of question marks there, and there's a lot of question marks, probably even more on the Pittsburgh Steelers side of things, as if you have not seen this week, it sounds like the Steelers are going to start Russell Wilson at quarterback and not Justin Fields. Justin Fields led the Steelers to a 4-2 record so far, has played somewhat clean football, only one interception. And yes, a 4-2 record, but as they said, Russell Wilson was the starting quarterback. He got hurt and he's healthy again, and that's why they are wanting to go back to him. I don't know how this offense is going to look for the Steelers with him there. So it's hard to really kind of pick here if the Steelers are going to win this game because, well, how are they going to look offensively? We have yet to see Russell Wilson lead this offense anything. I'm not going to count preseason. I don't count that at all. So in the regular season, this is going to be a new look if it is Russell Wilson that's starting this game. The Jets, on the other hand, Davante Adams is there. Aaron Rodgers is happy. We know what they can do. How quick are they going to get to that? I'm worried on the Steelers secondary side of things, having to cover him and Garrett Wilson and an occasional Allen Lazard deep throw. It's going to be kind of scary, in my opinion, on our secondary because I feel like that's kind of our weak spot right now. We know TJ Watt's going to do his thing. I expect him to get hopefully a sack or two against Aaron Rodgers, maybe throw him off his game there. But I think the Steelers offense needs to compete in this game if they want to win. But I don't see it happening. I really don't. I'm not saying this Jets team is going to turn into the best team overnight, but where they're now getting stronger is where I think the Steelers are a little weak right now, and that is the secondary position. So I'm going to go with the Jets this game, winning this. We're going to go 24-17 Jets. Ed?
There is a particular stat that I know every Steelers fan is completely fond of, and that is the sack percentage. How often is the defense sacking the opposing quarterback? And when you take a look at this between these two teams, as far as the Jets protecting Aaron Rodgers, they're not doing a great job, and that's not even against a really great pass rush team like the Steelers. So I do expect that sieve of an offensive line for the Jets to not allow enough time for Aaron Rodgers to see Davante Adams out there in the field or get those deep shots to Garrett Wilson like we've been talking about. So I for basically every 10% of New York Jets dropbacks end in a sack. Well, guess what? 9% of Pittsburgh's pass rushes end in a sack. So that's going to go up on both sides at the end of this game. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the one of the best orders of press conferences that we have in the league right now in the Fighting Mike Tomlins, and go with the Steelers. This is going to be pretty ugly. This is going to be probably Monday Night Football this past week against the Bills. Ugly. So we're talking like 16-13. Just there's really not much to say about offensive firepower between these two, considering what they're up against.
Thaddeus?
Yeah, I am actually excited to see Russell Wilson back. Now, as we all know, the Seahawks totally won that trade with the Broncos. They absolutely fleeced them, got a bunch of great picks out of it. The Broncos struggled for 2 years under Russell Wilson, and then he gets traded to the Steelers. Now, we get to see him for the first time in a Pittsburgh uniform, and I'm very excited. Now, I think it is due to the age factor that Wilson struggled a little bit in Denver. However, the reason he was so successful in Seattle was because he always had a running game. At the peak of his powers, Wilson was at his best when he had a great running game with Marshawn Lynch. Denver, he didn't really have a running game. Javonte Williams is good, but he never had like that great production that you need out of a number one running back. Now you have Najee Harris in Pittsburgh, and I think that'll do a really good job for Russell Wilson. He was not a fit for Sean Payton's offense. Let's be straight. Like when people started asking, let Russ cook, that shouldn't have happened. We all know, like, don't let Russ cook. Just let Russ be incorporated into a running offense, and he can incorporate himself very well. So I think him and Arthur Smith might actually get along well, and I have the Steelers winning this game. Just like Ed said as well, this Jets offensive line has not been very good. You might be worried about the secondary, but this Steelers D line with TJ Watt, probably between him and Fred Warner for defensive player of the year. Yeah, as an Irish fan. For one of the best defensive players we've ever seen. And I think Alex Highsmith is coming back from injury as well, which should be huge for them. And I just think they're going to overwhelm Rodgers before he can, get those passes out to Adams and Wilson. So I got the Steelers winning this 20-10.
Yeah, I've just like you, Thaddeus. I'm very interested to see how things are going to go. I'm excited to see Russell Wilson in his first game. It's something new, it's something different. And yeah, we went 4-2 with Justin Fields, but we do have a really banged up offensive line. Yes, it may make you wonder, well, why are we putting in a quarterback that's coming back from injury behind a line that's banged up? But I think that they don't want. I mean, Justin Fields, when he has to run around sometimes, is when he does play a little sloppy, but he is talented enough to do that. Whereas Russell Wilson, getting up there in age, he can't do that as much anymore. But I think they really want an Arthur Smith offense to go into full effect. And I think Russell Wilson brings that best for an Arthur Smith offense is run the ball, pocket passer, and let the plays eventually open up after running the ball. So I think that's kind of what we're going to see the recipe going into this game. We'll see if it is a success or not. But I hope the Steelers do win, it being my team. But we will ultimately see. But that's about all we have today, folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in. If you hit that like, subscribe button, and share these videos, we would greatly appreciate that. And also let us know in the thoughts your predictions on the 5 games that we chose this week. And let us know your predictions on some of the other games that are taking place this week as well. Till next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.